Here's what most people don't realize about job interviews. You don't usually lose the offer because of your experience, but because of something specific you said without realizing how it sounded. I've sat in dozens of interviews where really strong candidates were ruled out because of one specific sentence. It wasn't anything dramatic. It was just a few words that quietly raised a red flag. And the worst part about it is that no one tells candidates about these phrases. You don't actually get feedback on it. You just get the thanks but no thanks email and you never really know why. So in this video, I'm breaking down 8 things you must never say in an interview and more importantly, what to say instead so that you're the one who gets hired. Let's get into it. The first thing is admitting you're nervous. The interview starts with the classic, "So how are you today?" And you go, "Actually, I'm quite nervous," or "I didn't sleep so well, I'm a bit stressed." Well, honesty is good, but only in the right context. The psychology of what the interviewer hears is if that person can't regulate their emotions in a quiet and calm interview room, how are they going to behave if we put them in front of a client or if they're under stress and pressure regarding a deadline? They're actually testing your emotional stability from the very first sentence on. Instead, a better response is simply, "I'm doing well, thank you. I'm excited to be here." That's neutral, professional, and you're not oversharing. The second mistake, using cliche weaknesses. When they ask, "What's your biggest weakness?" and you go, "I'm a perfectionist, I work too hard, I just care too much about my job." Every recruiter has heard these kind of phrases hundreds of times. It's not impressive. It actually sounds like you're dodging the question or you're lacking self-awareness or the professional maturity to actually answer the question. Because what they're actually testing with this question is your self-awareness and your ability to improve and grow. A better answer is something real but manageable. Something like, "In the past, I used to take on too much work myself instead of delegating. Over the last year, I've been more intentional about sharing tasks by working together with others to achieve great results." Now you sound like someone who's self-reflected and who actually grows. The third mistake you can make is having no real-life examples at hand. This is a huge one. They ask you, "Tell me about a time when you handled conflict at work," or "Tell me about a time when you solved a problem at work," and you freeze. You say something like, "I can't really think of any specific example at the moment," but that's a red flag. Because these kinds of behavioral questions, they will come up in an interview and they are designed to test practice and not theory. And if you can't come up with an example, they will either think that you don't have the professional maturity, that you've never actually encountered conflict or you never solved a problem at work, or they will start to think that you didn't prepare enough for this interview because these kind of questions are definitely to be expected. And this is exactly what happened when I was sitting in on an interview where we were recruiting for a more senior role. And the candidate was asked to describe a situation in which he handled conflict well within his team. And he just couldn't come up with any example and made up some fictitious situation. And I clearly remember the hiring manager afterwards in the debrief saying that this was really awkward because it's quite a standard question and he should have been able to answer this. So it seems like he just didn't prepare well enough for the interview, maybe because he just doesn't care enough about this role. So before any interview, you should at least prepare one example of how you handle conflict, one example of how you handled failure or mistake, a moment in which you showed leadership, and one achievement. Just 4 or 5 stories or situations can cover most of these questions. The fourth mistake you can make is criticizing the company in the interview. Now, some candidates try to sound proactive by pointing out what's wrong with the business. They'll say something like, "I saw that your social media is actually not that engaging, I can fix that," or "Your website actually looks really outdated, especially compared to your competitors. Let me help you with that." And now, on paper, you think you're showing initiative. You think you're showing the company why they actually especially need you. Whereas in reality, you're most likely insulting the person sitting across from you. Because behind that social media presence and behind that website, there's very likely a team who's been working on this for months and months, and you're just flat out insulting their work. Now, that's not going to leave a good impression on you. Again, I remember sitting in on an interview when we were recruiting for our mobile team app at the bank, and the candidate told the hiring manager that our app looked somewhat buggy and felt kind of cheap versus some of the fintech, more digital and modern competitors. Now, what he didn't know was that the manager was building up that app from scratch for the past 18 months. It was basically his baby. And needless to say, that candidate did not get the offer. Instead, you want to frame your insights through the lens of opportunity and partnership. You can try this instead. I've been following your recent expansion into the digital space, and I'm really impressed by the direction you're taking. Based on my background in XY, I see some really exciting opportunities to build on that momentum and help scale the XY area even further. Now you've identified the same problem, but you framed it as growth and not failure. So you go from critique to collaborator. Quick break. If you want to make sure that you never walk out of an interview again thinking, what went wrong? Hit subscribe because I post these kinds of insider deep dives every week. Now let's get back to it. The fifth mistake you can make is rambling without structure. The interviewer asks a simple question and you proceed with a 5-minute long story with no clear beginning, no clear ending, and no actual point, where at the end you're not even sure yourself what you just said. This signals poor communication, a lack of structure, and a lack of clear thinking. And especially in a role like consulting, this is a no-go, because your skill to relay information in a structured way is actually part of the job. A very simple fix for that is the STAR method. Start by explaining the situation, so what was happening, then the task, so what you needed to do, what was the action that you actually did, and what was the result, so what happened in the end. Even just thinking in that structure will make you sound 10 times more organized. The sixth mistake is talking badly about former employers. This is the fastest way to signal that you are a toxic hire, even if your complaints are true. You say something like, my last manager was a micromanager, the company I worked for was very disorganized, my team was very difficult to work with. Even if this is true, the interviewer immediately starts to think, are they difficult to work with? And also, if we hire them, are they going to talk badly about us? It creates a trust issue. A better approach will be, I've really enjoyed my current role and learned a lot, but I'm ready for the next step and excited about a new challenge where I can grow my skills. The seventh mistake you can make is asking about pay too early. Now, salary matters, obviously, and you should ask about it, but not too early on. If one of your first questions is, how much salary does this job actually pay? It comes across as, they only care about the money. They don't actually care about the team or the company itself. And even if that's partially true, that's not the kind of impression you want to give early on. Let them bring it up first. And if you don't want to waste your time applying for jobs that are way below your salary expectation, you can check for these kinds of salary ranges on websites like Kununu or Glassdoor, so you know beforehand what roughly to expect. Or wait until later rounds to bring up compensation, because timing really matters with this kind of question. The last mistake is leaving a weak final impression. The end of the interview is arguably a critical moment where a lot of candidates have just mentally checked out already. Now, after you have asked all your questions towards the company, which hopefully you have, if you haven't, check out this video where I talk about some examples of questions that you should definitely ask to leave a good impression. And after that, when the hiring manager asks you, is there anything else we need to discuss? And you simply answer, no, I'm all good, thanks. You have just failed the energy test. You don't want to end with a flat response like this. You want the interviewers to remember you, and you want to show them that you have the same energy and enthusiasm in the 60-minute interview that you had in minute 1 as you have in minute 60. Think of an interview like a performance. You don't just stop acting and walk off the stage before the lights go down, but you actually need a closing statement to reinforce your value. Instead, you can try a 3-step approach. First off, start with the gratitude part. You can say something like, thank you so much for the conversation today. I really enjoyed learning more about the team's approach to XY. Then go on with the reiteration. Based on what we discussed, I'm even more confident that my experience in XY would allow me to hit the ground running. And then go over to the final hook. I'm very interested in the role. What are the next steps in your process? By doing this, you've moved from the passive candidate to the active partner. You're not just waiting for them to pick you, but you're actively signaling them that you have chosen them. You leave the room with high energy, making it way easier to remember you and to finally say yes to you. So here's the big takeaway. Most people leave an interview thinking, did I answer this question correctly? Whereas really, you should be asking yourself, did I leave a really good impression? These are just tiny little tweaks that you can easily fix to make you go from almost got the offer to welcome to the team. If you found this helpful, hit the like button, subscribe, and let me know in the comments below what kind of mistakes you've made in interviews already. I'll make sure to reply, and thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next video.